So then we are back with more understandings from the time of the Second Tabernacle services that we find in the Aramaic English translation of the word. This translation comes from the original manuscripts of the prophets of the Israelic lineage. So then we can understand the time of the end. As per Yirmiyahu the prophet, we find a layer of understanding of the spring feast, the autumn feast, and also the returning of the cities of the Messiah later ways for many centuries. And then as we observe then the existing news from many types of internet sites, you find yourself then understanding what it means then the 61st chapter and chapter 1:8 of Yirmiyahu, where he then explained the returning of the holy city on the land of Cush as per the description of the prophet. Let's try to understand then what Yohanan did when he was then in charge with the task of gathering the documents, and then obviously he was preparing then those cities in Asia Minor so then they could start then closing the holy cities because obviously they were in sin. Let's try to understand the prophet Yirmiyahu. First, he was a true prophet, though he was sawn in half because of the ignorance of the people of his time. We are then absolutely studying his instructions because came from above, and Messiah himself was obviously quoting many of his writings because truly he was observing and hearing from heaven. There is, however, a section of it where we must then analyze what then this prophet had then explained. Chapter 1:8 explains then the land of Cush. Yirmiyahu then spoke also, believe it or not, of a person that would come in the future, and this person obviously was the Messiah. Then, during the time of the restoration period, we are then studying the manuscripts so then we can establish what it means then a holy city. Then when Yohanan placed those documents in order as per layers of understanding, what can we gather then from the holy city? Firstly then, Yirmiyahu knew then the first 1,000 years of the Messiah, a person would come and gather those documents, and then this person obviously was on the land of Cush. That's why then we find the starting point of the restoration period in the same place where then the first 1,000 years of the Messiah as in a holy city. Then both of them started. Similarly, we find in ourselves studying what it means then Gog and Magog. You find then United States and Israel. You can study for yourself and establish the situation absolutely 100% sure. However, as we study then the holy instructions prior of the destruction of the holy city of Jerusalem, then in 1009, you observe it was the first time where then from the Messiah then came then his death, and he came from the tomb, and the tomb was destroyed for the first time. When it was destroyed, during the period of the ending of the 1,000 years of the Messiah, as if the world was ending. These may not make sense at the moment, but hang on, because you will understand. The Creator, obviously, He is very wise. He is the wisest. So then He placed the instructions, and He obviously had His prophets recorded them, and then He put them to test. So whatsoever we read from Revelation, these were already experienced save the autumn feast. So let's then make these very sure. Then every situation was then tested except the autumn feast, or the vengeance precisely then placed on the 61st chapter of Yirmiyahu. Except these autumn feasts, whatsoever was there was then tested. Let's say you find then a set of writings and you test them. You then train for the end of the world using the first 1,000 years of the Messiah. Then came 1,000 years of Nahashatan. Then we are during the time of the restoration, obviously. Then we are preparing ourselves then for the autumn feast. So then, with this principle in mind, what then would be the understanding of the Creator, since He is the wisest? What would be His relation with Yohanan? Yohanan, obviously, he had to leave the area of Asia because there were then persecutions. But it's not a persecution as a light type of persecution. When the Messiah then, he was away from the time, when he was away from the time of this sinful world, though he was aware of this time, but he came out of this sinful time, his then relation with the Father was then, he was in the Holy of Holies. The first holy city was during the time of Yohanan in the land of Cush. If you study this very precisely, you can gather the information in the computer, or you can read secularly that there was a huge persecution of those who did want to teach then what the Messiah had done. It was extremely severe. It was so severe that Yohanan had to get out of the place, and he went to Africa. There then he spent his time. It was the first holy city. From there he gathered those documents. Then he sent them up north, and then those 7 cities that were in sin, those cities were obviously a place of mockery because they compromised with the world. But then Yohanan, obviously he sent the people over there, and they were with those documents, and they gave them to those 7 cities, and they were straightened out. Thus then became the 1,000 years of the Messiah. Then what Yirmiyahu had then recorded. Chapter 1:8 does not mean that the 61st is first or after. You don't understand by numbers, you understand by layers of understanding. Chapter 1:8 has a layer of the restoration period. Then woe to the land beyond the rivers of Ethiopia explains also regarding Congo in our time. Why? Because he's explaining of the time of the restoration period. Then the cities of the Messiah laid waste for many centuries would return. They would return. Returning means they were already in existence. So they are returning. So then you can absolutely understand Yohanan was in the land of Cush. There he then placed the first holy city, and from there then he straightened out those 7 cities. Thus then you understand why then the prophet Yirmiyahu mentioned the land of Cush, where the first holy city was at, as if the period of time event-wise was repeating itself, save the autumn feast. Because what is only lacking is the autumn feast, the ending of this age. You have 10 plus 9 years. Then the prophecy ends. Then, with this in mind, what can we understand as far as what the world is doing and not doing? United States again is involved with the situation in the Pacific. They are having some sort of situation over there regarding then Japan and the military exercises in the area. Australia got involved again with the US and against China. It's not going to work. Didn't work in March, it's not going to work today, and won't work. The time is for precision. US had the leadership taken out of Great Britain that was in charge for 800 years. So when we read then Revelation, you understand then the first beast and the second beast. It was granted for the first beast 800 years. However, this beast is a facet of the seat. Try to understand. it is a leader of the seat for the first 800 years, and then the second beast of the seat of 200 years, then completes 1,000. Then comes the restoration period, and then the autumn feast. It's not complicated. It's fairly simple. When a person is dedicated and understands the holy instructions, when you have desire of reading and understanding those layers, he will give you understanding. So then, with this in mind, what's going on in the Pacific? Same situation as was taking place in March. Did it work? No. Didn't work. At the moment, China is rejecting then the plans of the protection zone over the sea. And then the South Korea is also involved. Then Mr. Putin was in South Korea and wanted to unite then both Koreas. He was doing a great job. The United States got in the midst of it, and they kind of made a disaster out of the situation. And it's not going to work. Didn't work in March. It was an absolute shame, and it won't work later. China must take over the world system via online, the trade of the end. Bitcoin is doing great. We understand it was a triple of its price. There are some fluctuations going on, but you can understand what it means then, the world given over, and then understanding the step-by-step formation of the first son of Ibrahim and the second son of Ibrahim. We can't get away from those. So then, the time, 24 or 25 months from today, you can expect the new system to come to your own computer. Nations, they can't put up fences as they were in the 70s. You can't block a signal from the space. The equipment is already up there. The system is already uploaded. So then the new system comes, and then nations must be prepared for this new system. Thus we understand when Daniel mentioned regarding the time of the end. He said for a time people would go to and fro, and his own people would get mixed up with the world for 1,000 years. At the end of the 1,000 years, then would be a time of great knowledge, and knowledge would increase for the purposes of trade. Daniel the prophet was explaining this level of trade. Trade then he spoke of. What can we understand of high knowledge and computer? Meaning trade via computer. As we understand so simply, Congo, woe to the land beyond the rivers of Ethiopia. Then what do you take? You take a map, you understand the southern place beyond the rivers of Ethiopia. Obviously, he is observing from the north towards the south. Then you have to go beyond the rivers of Ethiopia and understand what is the most important place then regarding the time of the restoration, Gentile level, and then technology. You understand Congo. The same way, when you read the Holy Instructions, what can you understand of trade? The trade is becoming more computerized. So you can understand high knowledge via computer and trade, and then giving a chance for those people who are never involved in the high society. Most of them are scoundrels anyway. And then becoming trade very available, readily available for every person that has a computer. The system is extremely important and very simple. So then we find ourselves closer and closer, understanding then Yeshayahu chapter 1:8. And then we have to understand what goes on with the Holy Instruction. Then again, you have a couple of copies. A copy that came from the original manuscripts of the Tzayelic lineage, and then you have the other that came from the Greco and the Romans. They do not match. One of them is for truth, the other of them is for lie. Let's understand what it means then, the statue of salt of then the wife of Lot. Was she truly in a position of becoming a statue of salt because she was observing back? No. She simply stayed in the city. Lot was there. He got that lady over there in the city. She was from that place. In terms of a person that was there for so long, she became part of those people. Because if she was from the Creator, truly the Creator, she would have come out with him. And she didn't. She returned. So then in a situation that they didn't come out together, she simply stayed in the city and she was burned with the rest of them. So what is this story of statue of salt or column of salt? Back then, during the time of the translations, it was very popular for the Roman legions to go and then go into the northern parts of Africa and receiving then columns of salt as payment for taxes. They were reading the Holy Instructions. They didn't have a clue what they were reading. They didn't understand the Holy Instructions. They didn't understand the Holy Feasts. So then the only situation they could link up with was then the column of salt they used to get paid. Thus then the statue of salt. But it's not true. When the cities were burned, simply when the body burns completely, turns salt, the salt minerals that were in the bodies. Thus then, when she stayed in the city, she burned with the rest of them. It was a memorial of salt for us to remind ourselves what the Creator had done because of sin. So then, the Messiah himself then in Luke mentioned very precisely, so likewise the world should end. If you read what Messiah had said, you understand and you link up instantly the same layer as he linked himself with when he was reading then Bereshit. It's the same layer of understanding. The world must end with a shower of sulfur, rather than only a region of those cities of the plain is going to be worldwide, known as the second death. So step by step, we are closer and closer to finding out more truth and understanding layer by layer. When the Messiah then was explaining, he said not a layer of the Holy Instruction is going to be left undone. He did not say a word. He did not say characters of the Holy Instruction. He says simply layers of understanding. Every layer of understanding is going to be then completed. So then, as we understand, the economies of the world are in trouble. China must lead. As we read then again, Daniel the 11th chapter is then precisely for the time of the restoration period. We can't get away from it. There is the kingdom of the north, responsible later for the armies. There is the kingdom of the east, China. Given the 10th chapter of Daniel is simply for China. Then you find the kingdom of the south is Africa. So then, Mr. Mandela has died. A couple of days ago or so, he died. So the whole focus of this time in Africa is Mr. Kabila. Why do we say Mr. Kabila? Because he must be in line with the prophet. The prophet mentioned, woe to the land beyond the rivers of Ethiopia, and it is the land of Congo. Thus, he must take place of Mr. Mandela. Mr. Kabila then became the most important person in Africa. So then we are in line with the prophet. The more we read and understand and then do what the prophet said, the more our understanding then opens. So, with this in mind, what can we expect? Next year, you'll find then the nations of the BRICS coming to Brazil. Ceará, Fortaleza, they're going to have a talk of it there because the situation in Brazil is very dire. Brazil in the last quarter was then minus 0.5% in the economy. The economy went down. Brazil has blown it. Then not only this, then next year in September opens then the first phase of Dragon Mart then in Cancun. then the economy of US is absolutely going to take a plunge. Then in the next month, in October, then opens up then the Panama Canal. The second canal of Panama is going to be opened. So the economies are then lining up themselves as US is becoming an auxiliary force and a secondary economy. China must lead. There is no way of going around it. China must lead. And they will lead. So then, let's read then a piece of Zephaniah, very important prophet. There is a portion of it that we should read, be acquainted with, regarding then the salt situation. Some say, oh, where do we find then a reference regarding the salt? Well, it's very simple. The prophet was explaining many areas of these, and he came up not only with this. He explains of freighters, he explains of Ethiopia, and he explains many other situations, and also he explains regarding then the salt, mountains of salt. These he is having an understanding of the time of the restoration period, and he's also having the understanding of the end of the world. So every prophet, when you read, you find a section of the understanding of the restoration, and you find also the ending of the world. The same the Messiah spoke of, the same the prophets spoke of. It never changes, because Yahweh the Creator, He never changes. So then every prophet spoke the same way. So as the Messiah. There is a consistency every time. So when you read then Zephaniah, you can read it for yourself, and you find then, for instance, the day of wrath, explaining the time of the autumn feast. You find then the cities of the plain. You find then salt, because he knew the second death would be a shout of sulfur worldwide, and then ending this age, so then the other age would start. With this in mind, what can we expect? The Messiah also spoke regarding those people who would be absolutely naive and ignorant of his return. He said some people would be then having children and having a barn and, being in a relationship, but they were never interested in understanding tabernacling. Nobody's speaking of church. Church does not exist. Church is a pure lie for the purposes of money. Congregations exists for gathering, for the listening of the holy instructions. So people, they work and they set aside the Shabbat for the reading of the instructions. That's what it is. Then you find yourself reading further and understand tabernacling. So then, let's say a person who never heard of tabernacling, they don't understand. Moshe gave then the layout how it should be. People gather around and they form a holy city as per the instructions of Moshe. Thus then, when the Messiah said the authority was given to him in heaven and in this planet, in the earth, he was taking the place of his Father in the Holy of Holies. Very simple. So church does not exist. What does exist? Congregations. Then after you read Zephaniah, you find in the day of wrath, you find then the day of destruction, you find then the salt. Then you understand what Yirmiyahu also spoke. With this in mind, then, we should warn ourselves or what went on then this year in March. They went to China and they tried to go against China. What went on? What went on with Australia? The first Prime Minister of Australia was then deposed. So then the outcome of going against what the Creator has stated is very dangerous. He gave already the instructions so we could read and become wise with them. But some nations, they simply don't learn. US simply does not learn. That they are involved in the Pacific where they shouldn't be involved in the Pacific. US must become an auxiliary force. A great country in the past. We are in a new era where then we must respect what Daniel the 11th chapter has then recorded. So then for our benefit, so we can do trade via computer. Not only this, but infrastructure is very important. China, some time ago, about a month and a half or a couple of months ago, then they are involving every retailer in China via computer. Those places of trade did not have computerized systems. They are involved with computerized systems. There is a huge upgrade of computerized systems for the time of the end. The objective of a computer is for trade. Try to understand. We do also understand there are other areas the computer is used for. Understandable. But the tone of the prophet Daniel was precisely and exclusively for trade use, because he was a tradesperson. As long as we understand the core of the prophecy, the rest of it then is included afterwards. If you like the computer then because you like to do your own games, you play games, you are wasting your time. The reason for the computer is for the trade of the end. Coming shortly, next 24-25 months, you will find the system in your computer, downloading it. Next year, Dragon Mart is opening up again in Cancun. The economy of US is going to get in a big trouble, because people used to go then to US to get the products, and they obviously are going to make a detour and go to Mexico because they can get up to 5 times cheaper the same products, and then they can earn more. So then, let's be wise and do what the Messiah said to do. And then Shaliach, Shaul has mentioned in Romans, he said, renew your mind with the holy instructions. What can we understand the holy instructions? Renew your mind with the layers of understanding. Please stay tuned, much more coming up.